Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to bring you another horror and thriller dark fiction wrap-up. And I'm happy to say that I'm finally reading a lot more 2023 releases, and it's just the fact that I've gotten my hands on a lot of them. There are some great recommendations here. Last year, if you followed my channel closely, you know that I really struggled when it came to finding new releases that were to my taste when it comes to the dark and stabby, and thankfully this year is starting off much stronger. I have some great books that I really enjoyed, and hopefully you will as well. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk about episode 13 by Craig DiLouie. This is a book that I received for review from the publisher. And in the story, we follow an investigative team, a husband and wife that go around and investigate different supposedly haunted places as part of their reality TV show. In the 13th episode, they go off to investigate this building where all of these experiments were being conducted. And so, of course, they believe that this place will be haunted. And the story accounts for what happens when they go in. Now, this is a really fun story that leans into kind of the multimedia style formatting. It's not so much pictures, but you really have different kind of transcripts giving the full account of the setup. That is not my favorite narrative format. I actually tend to prefer when it's just more of a classic novel, but this one doesn't overuse those elements, and instead it actually fits well within the story because, again, it is designed to be a reality TV show. And so I think that it wasn't done to the point of like nauseum, and so I ended up really liking this one. It kind of gave me vibes of A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay, just because once again you have a reality TV show and it's kind of like what's real, what's for the camera, and I thought it was very well plotted. So despite not being entirely the kind of story that I normally am drawn to, again, I don't tend to love haunted house stories. I'm a little bit mixed when it comes to these like multimedia type stories where there's like transcripts and all that. It was very well done for what it was doing, and I ended up quite enjoying it. So if you love those aspects, you will probably love this one even more than I did. I definitely thought it was a strong story by this author, and I think a lot of you will like it as well. Next up, we have Sister Maiden Monster by Lucy A. Snyder. This is another book that I received from the publisher for review, and this is a story that takes place during a virus outbreak, so it's a bit of an apocalyptic novel, and we follow three women of very different backgrounds and personalities that have to survive during this pandemic. Now, I think for a lot of us, the word pandemic can be rather triggering. Some people really avoid pandemic fiction at this point, which I totally respect. I am a little bit hit or miss when it comes to the subgenre, and other people have enjoyed reading it, and I've got to say there has been a lot that has come out in the past few years, and I would say that the genre has gotten a little bit tired. At this point, I've read so many different versions of stories like this that it takes a really unique narrative to bring something new to the table. Unfortunately, I don't think this one did that. In the story, it felt very traditional, very predictable. It's very short, which probably works in its favor, but I think the real challenge is the fact that, as you can tell from the title, this story is all framed around three women, and I didn't find the women to be particularly distinct or memorable or finding myself very attached to them. I don't necessarily need to like them, they don't need to be my best friends, but given a story that is so character focused, I really wanted to have very distinct impressions of these women, and they kind of felt all the same to me, even though the author went to great lengths to try to give them each a very unique position. They kind of just felt like the same woman, which was very disappointing. Overall, I thought this one was fine, but again, when it comes to pandemic fiction, I'm looking for something special, something different, and this one was kind of more of the same. If you just love pandemic fiction and cannot get enough of it, this is one you may want to check out. It's very action-paced, and again, it's very short, so it is easy to fly through. It just didn't leave the strongest impression on me. I don't know if I'll be thinking about it when I go to make my end of the year list, but at the same time, it was easy to read, and I did fly through it in, I think, just a day. Next up, we have The Spite House by Johnny Compton, another book I received for review from the publisher, and in the story we follow a man who is on the run with his young children, and because of that he can't really hold down a proper job. Instead, he has to get whatever comes his way, and so he ends up taking a lot of unsavory positions. However, he gets the opportunity to work as a caretaker in this supposedly haunted house and somewhat investigate what is going on, and he reluctantly goes ahead because he really needs the money. He really needs this for his family. So I like the story for a few reasons, one being the fact that I really enjoy stories that involve parents that have to do whatever it takes for the sake of their the children, that desperation, really rings true and tends to be a really good motivator when it comes to horror, because often horror stories involve characters going into situations that they really shouldn't, but in the case of this one, it made sense because he had to do whatever he had to do. And so you can, as the reader, be yelling at him saying, don't do it, but you also understand why he's going ahead with this job. I also like that this one brings an own voices Black perspective, which I didn't actually realize when I first picked up the book. This is a Black family, and so you get some very light social commentary that's woven into the story and really adds to the gothic southern feel. And I love this one because it really brings, again, a sense of family to the story. It's very much at the center of the story, and I thought that both the children and the father had very distinct personalities and characters, and I just thought it was very well developed, and so I really did like this one. I will admit that haunted house stories are not normally my thing, but this one worked well for a few reasons. It just felt a little bit different. While it wasn't completely out of left field, I felt that it was a little bit fresh and brought some new perspectives to the story. And I also like the fact that it's more on the side of investigation versus a family moving into a haunted house and having no idea that it's haunted. This one just rang a little bit more true, a little bit more believable, and a little bit more grounded. The part of the story I'm not completely sold on was the ending. It wasn't entirely to my taste, and I don't want to say that the ending is bad because it's not, but it wasn't an ending that really brought up the story. It was just a little bit out of left field for my personal taste, but I'll leave it there and let you experience it for yourself. Overall, I did enjoy this one. Definitely one of the strongest 2023 horror releases I've read so far, and I was really excited for it because, again, I never like haunted house stories, and this one was really good. Next up, we have The Eaters of Gods by Dan Franklin, and this is a book that I received for review from Cemetery Dance. I don't believe it's technically a 2023 release, but it was re-released by this publisher in this beautiful hardback edition. In the story, we follow a professor who is following his wife's research, and that leads him to go looking for this lost Egyptian tomb. What he believes he will find, he ends up finding a lot more, and this turns into a horror story. This is one where I don't want to give away too much of the plot because I'll be honest, this book is super short. I flew through it very quickly. It's very action driven. It starts off with a bang, so much so that while of course I'm reading a physical copy of it, I almost had this panic moment where I thought that I was missing a chapter, or thought maybe I'd picked up book 2 by accident and I was maybe reading something that I shouldn't have yet. But this book just flies into the story and it does not stop until the end. So if you're looking for a page turner, if you're in a reading slump, this might be a really attractive one to pick up because it is so easy to get into and fly through. But at the same time, I actually will admit that I wish I'd been a little bit longer, a little bit slower, and a little bit more focused on character development. Often when a story goes this quickly, I feel like it misses some of the elements that really makes it a favorite. I love Egyptian mythology and history, and I really want to spend more time in those elements, but it was just so go, and honestly I wanted to stop and take a breath, and it just never let me. So I actually found this one to be a little bit too fast for my personal taste, which kind of remove some of the excitement from the reading experience. So one that I cautiously recommend if you love a super fast story. Next up is a backlist title, and that is Touch the Night by Max Booth III. And this is a story that follows two young boys in a sleepy town. They are up to some mischief, some petty damage, and are going around the town as boys will be boys. However, there is something that goes wrong and they end up getting involved with the cops, but the cops are maybe not actually cops, and so they disappear and their families start to wonder what happened to them. This is a book that I love the setup of it. I thought it was really interesting how it really has some great social commentary on police work. This book has one of the main characters being a boy who is Black, and so you definitely get into some of the racial profiling and the experience of being a person of color working with the police. And so I thought those aspects were really well developed, well nuanced. This is also a coming of age story with two well developed main characters at the center of it. I love the setup, but I will be honest, I didn't entirely love the second half. I felt like it went on a little too long, and if it had been a tighter story, it would have got an even stronger rating from me. I did like it, but I definitely think it could have been a little bit more polished or a little bit more edited down for my personal taste. Apparently I'm picky. I don't want books to be too short or too long or too fast or too slow. But again, I really love some of the commentary within this one. I thought it was smart. I've read so many coming of age stories at this point that it's hard to really differentiate some of them from each other. But this one was really good and I did like it. Wasn't quite perfect, but still worth reading. Next is Wasp and the Ice Cream by Tim McGregor, and this is a coming of age story. This one is a new release, and in the story, it's set in the 1980s. We follow a young boy who is up to mischief. He's trying to just hang out with his friends, get away from his family, which has complicated dynamics, and he ends up kind of falling in love with a girl that he meets. He finds out that she has a complicated past. She has a dead sister, and he invites him to go and do a seance to speak with her dead sister, and the story goes from there. This is technically a horror story, but in the way that I feel like every coming of age story somehow gets labeled as horror. There's a slight mystery to it, but really it's so much more about the characters coming of age, and I really liked it. It's very character focused. There honestly isn't a lot of plot. If I were to make a comparison to other coming of age stories, the one that actually reminds me of is the Virgin Suicides. So once again, you have a young boy, or in that case, a group of boys that are just in love or enamored by this group of young sisters and really following them from the outside. And so it's very much a loss of innocence, a boy meets girl scenario. And again, one that is more about the characters than a mystery or horrifying ending. But if you just want to go along for the ride, if you want the nostalgic feels, I thought this one was very well done. Again, I read a ton of coming of age stories and sometimes they kind of blend together, but this one was very distinct. While it leans into the tropes, it does them very well. And I was thoroughly impressed. If you love coming of age stories, this is definitely a new release you want to check out. And last, I want to talk about Our Sheriff Knight, and this is a sweeping family epic that follows a young boy whose father had the ability to speak with the dead, and his son also has this ability, and now people are coming for him. And this is a story, as I mentioned, that's kind of told over a series of decades, so you really follow the family throughout the years. And I fully admit that I wanted to love this one. I've read the author's short stories before, and while I don't tend to love the short story format, her stories were fantastic. In the case of this one, I definitely still liked parts of her writing, some of the character work, but this book is super long and I just don't think I love sweeping family epics. I know it is a whole genre of its own, much more in literary fiction, and it's just not for me. It's way too character focused and really lacks enough plot to keep me fully engaged, at least for that long. So this is a book that I definitely, again, enjoyed pieces of it. I love the cultural elements. There were some moments, some scenes, some parts that I thought were very quotable or poignant, but there was so much else in the book that I found to be very exhaustive. So if you're someone who loves long sweeping stories, this one could totally work for you. I don't think this is a bad book. This is very much a case of a book that is not for me, that I picked up hoping it would be and isn't, but I don't think the book itself is problematic or bad. It's just not my thing. So if it is yours, please go check it out. If you share my taste in books, you may not love this one either. And as my Booktube shoutout this week, I want to talk about Biblio Obscura. And she is a channel that I really want to shout out because I love her content and I think a lot of you will. So she is a reviewer that focuses on what she describes as like dark fiction. So she reads a lot of different things, but like me, I'm really just kind of starting to shy away from specific labels. Obviously I love horror, I love thrillers, but really what I love is dark books and I don't want to be confined to one genre. If a book is dark, I don't care if it's science fiction or literary, I want to read it, and she is very much the same. And she also has a mandate within her reading where she really loves to read books that are translated or books that are from different international places. So if you're looking to diversify your reading in that way, she is an excellent place to go for recommendations. We share a lot of tastes, and I also love the fact that she reads a lot of books that even I haven't heard of. I have a pretty good reputation online for finding some more obscure books, and she is even better at that. So I'm always shy to recommend her channel to you because you're going to find out where I come up with some of my own reading recommendations from. So highly recommend her. I think she needs way more subscribers and I hope you go and check her out. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know of the books I talked about, which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And also let me know, have you read any 2023 releases? If you have, let me know if I should check them out as well. If you're new to my channel, I do read a lot of horror, thriller, science fiction, fantasy, and true crime. And if you want to help me out with this video, you can give it a thumbs up, you can share it around online, you can drop a comment, even if it's just a little haunted house. And if you want to hit that notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.